Okay, so let's keep going with this. So he lists up a whole he lists up some of the problems. So one of them is, are you going to pay more for tastier food that has been treated better by the people that make it? Meaning not so many pesticides and all kinds of things that were used, but it's more expensive. All right, here's another problem he lists. He says, if the organic, the local one, or the imported, meaning, do you want to eat fruit? If you go to the store, you can buy fruit from New York City farms, but you can also get fruit from farms much farther away that have been shipped here. Now, if you care about environmentalism, the food that was shipped here was brought here on a truck or in an airplane, and that means that those are vehicles which do damage to the environment. If you give a shit about the environment, you might try to support your local farmers instead of far away farmers, because your local farmers are not damaging the environment as much, because they're not flying their food in airplanes. Um, and so, if you care about people, I mean, some of you are probably rolling your eyes at how stupid all this sounds, but this is a real thing people think about: is, do you want to eat locally? Do you want to get your food nearby? Um, okay, cool. And also, do you want to support local farmers? Do you want your money going to a farmer in a different country who is sending you food, or do you want your money going to the people who make food that live near you? A lot of people feel like they want to support local farmers because they're sort of neighbors, and you should support your neighbors like we're all doing during COVID. Okay. All right. Another option, he says, the wild fish or the farmed. Meaning, do you want to get fish that lived its whole life in a tank and was always going to be food? Or do you want to get fish that was caught out in a river somewhere where the fish lived free for most of its life? Um, Again, that's probably will not surprise you. The fish that was not the fish in the tank that always lived its life in a tank, so that the person who raised the fish would kill it and sell it to you. That fish is a hell of a lot cheaper. Whereas fresh fish that lived out in the wild, and was caught, that fish that lived a life, that fish live out there in the world, and then was caught, is much more expensive. Um, One of the reasons why that um, is because the fish in the tank that was always going to be food, that never lived in a river, just lived its whole life in a tank or whatever, that kind of fish was generally fed crap. Why? Because farmers are trying to make as much money as possible, and so they feed the fish whatever's cheapest. But this means that the fish that has been fed the cheapest, when you eat an animal, you're not just eating the animal, you're eating what the animal ate. If you feed animals junk, then the meat tastes worse. If you feed animals nice, healthy things, like grass instead of cornmeal, corn syrup again, um, then the food tastes better. The problem is that feeding animals healthy food makes them taste better, but that healthy food is expensive, and so when you see the meat in the store, it's more expensive. But it also tastes better. So, there's another problem. All right, he lists off another one: trans fats, or the butter, or the not butter. I'm not going to get into trans fats, because also that's not really a thing in America anymore. But that was an ingredient in food that got banned years ago, and you guys probably don't even know what that is, so don't worry about it. But butter or not butter is a perfectly good question. You guys know that you can buy butter at the store. But there's also these things that are sort of like butter, but are not butter. Um, Margarine is like a fake butter substitute. It's not really, it sort of looks like butter, it sort of tastes like butter, but it's not butter. It's made from some kind of weird oils and shit. Oh, another one you guys might know? Um, Cheese Whiz, like that cheese that you spray out of a can, that's not real cheese. It sort of tastes like cheese, but that's not actually cheese. It's just something that seems like cheese. Velveeta is not cheese. It looks like cheese. It sort of tastes like cheese, but Velveeta cheese is not cheese. It's some kind of weird product made from oils and other bizarre things. So when you go, again, cheaper. Real cheese, much more expensive. Velveeta, hella cheap. Um, Velveeta also doesn't taste as good as real cheese. And the Cheese Whiz also doesn't taste as good as real cheese. Although Cheese Whiz is pretty good though. Sometimes I do like these junky foods. Okay, so he's listing off all these problems. He mentions, shall I be a carnivore or a vegetarian? That's an easy one, right? Are you going to eat meat, or are you? I mean, it's Not an easy one to solve, but it's an easy problem to understand. Are you going to eat meat or are you going to eat vegetables? But if you're not going to eat meat, you have more choices. For example, in the last piece, we talked about whether or not if you're going to be a vegetarian or not, right? Are you going to kill animals for food, or are you just going to eat, are you not going to eat animals? But Pollan raises another whole level of the problem, which is some people feel like they'll say, I'm going to be a vegetarian, meaning I'm not going to eat meat because I care about the animals and I don't want to be harming animals for food. But there are some people, I don't know if you know about vegans, but there are people who say, oh, you don't want animals suffering for your enjoyment? I'm so glad you're a vegetarian. Also, you should give up milk and eggs. Well, why? Well, because milking, a lot of the places that you get milk from don't treat the cows very good. And a lot of places that you get eggs from don't treat the chickens very good. They treat them like these are not a lot of the milk you get and the chickens you get aren't coming from like little farms where the farmer is going around and taking the eggs and getting up in the morning and milking the cow. Where it's coming from is these kinds of factories where the animals are kept in these ice cold, kind of ugly, dirty places, and they're hooked up to machines, and the machines collect the eggs and the machines collect the milk. And this obviously is not happy for the animals who don't get to go outside, and they're not really eating grass. They're eating like garbage corn syrup nonsense, that food that other people don't want. And so a lot of people feel like being a vegetarian is not enough. If you care about animal suffering, you should also give up milk and eggs. So he mentions lacto vegetarian or vegan, right? Are you going to be lacto means milk. So the issue is are you going to eat milk or not as a vegetarian? Are you going to eat eggs or not as a vegetarian? So these are some of the problems. When you go to the supermarket and you have so many different kinds of foods you can eat, that's the omnivore part. You eat everything. You can eat everything. But the dilemma is, what are you going to choose to eat, and how are you going to choose to eat it? So he lists off some of these problems. Are you going to get the butter or the not butter? Are you going to get the local apple or the apple that was shipped here from far away? Are you going to get the organic apple or the normal apple? Are you going to get the, he has all, and again, I mentioned Velveeta cheese or real cheese. Are you going to get the honey from a bear that's cheap, or are you going to get the expensive honey that's real? So tricky. Okay. He keeps going with this. He says, like the hunter-gatherer, he's thinking of a caveman here, like the hunter-gatherer picking up a novel mushroom, novel means new, meaning the person hasn't seen it before. Like the hunter-gatherer picking up a novel mushroom off the forest floor and consulting his sense memory to determine its edibility, we pick up the package in the supermarket and, no longer so confident of our senses, scrutinize the label. So he says, just like in the old days, a caveman might see a mushroom on the ground and look at it and try to figure out if it's safe to eat, people in the supermarket will try to figure out what's safe or healthy to eat. And one of the ways you do that is you look at the ingredients listed on the back. But that presents its own kind of problems. Because people scratch their heads over the meaning of phrases like heart healthy, no trans fat, cage free, or range fed. What is natural grill flavor, or TBHQ, or xanthan gum? What's all this stuff anyway, and where in the world did it come from? So sometimes you might want to look at the ingredients in something to see if it's good for you. But like a lot of times, I don't even know what the fuck the ingredients are, and they sound like chemicals, but I don't know if they're like okay for me to eat chemicals, or if they're like really bad for me chemicals, and I probably shouldn't be eating them. So just like the caveman in the old days would look at the mushroom on the ground and be like, is this going to poison me or not? We do the same thing in the supermarket. But and just like for the caveman, it's hard to know if that mushroom is safe to eat. It's hard for us to know whether these ingredients on the back are just like, are they okay to eat, or are they actually really bad for me? You see corn syrup and honey, and if you've been eating that your whole life, you're like, I guess it's fine. But it's not great for you to eat that much corn syrup. By the way, I say this, but I am also addicted to corn syrup, and I drink a lot of soda, so I'm not better than anybody. I do the same kind of stuff. Okay, so he points out that these are the problems, and also like you see these, like if you ever go buy eggs, they'll have different kinds of things written on them. So sometimes you just get eggs, and they just say eggs, but sometimes you'll see cage-free or range-fed eggs, meaning that the chickens don't live in cages. Well, that means the chickens are probably happier, right? Also, you realize when they say cage-free eggs, it means all the eggs that don't say that are probably coming from chickens living in cages, and their eggs are being collected in some kind of very unpleasant factory situation that's making them very unhappy. But range-free or cage-free eggs means the chickens are living, running around on a farm somewhere. But how do you really know? And how do you know what it's like? And how do you know if it's better? By the way, I gotta pick us up in the next video.